My name is Morgan Day. I work on the World of Warcraft team with the Dungeon and Raid team. I work on encounters. I'm the lead encounter designer is my role specifically. Right. So we're going into the Tomb of Sargeras specifically to close it back up, right? We're taking all the pillars of creation that we've been collecting throughout Legion, and we're taking it back in the tomb, and we're going to go seal it up. So the first boss we fight is Goroth. He will be boss 1. Followed by that, you can go either to the Demonic Inquisition or Harjatan. After you beat the Demonic Inquisition, you can plug in one of the pillars of creation. From there, you go into the Naga Wing, Mistress Sassnine. I never pronounce her name. Something like that. You plug in the Tidestone of Gorgonoth there. After that, we go into what I call the Night Elf Wing, where you fight a council of ghostly night elves, followed by the Desolate Host. And from there, you plug in the Tears of Elune, at which point you can open up a door that goes downstairs into more Titan architecture. Like there was the Tomb of Sargeras was built on top of this Titan prison, basically.
Yes.
Down there, you fight the Maiden, and then you go down this huge, really badass elevator and fight the Fallen Avatar, which is, the avatar that Sargeras took the form of when he came down. And then the end boss would be Kil'jaeden. Once we have plugged in all the pillars of creation, we can access Kil'jaeden. Oh no! Most fun. That's like picking my favorite child. It's really hard to do. I guess I can speak more to Tomb itself. Of one of the things I'm really excited about is we'll be using the environment. It plays a big role in a lot of the encounters, which I'm super stoked whenever we have the opportunity to do that. So one of the things I've been wanting to do for years, and we finally had an opportunity to do it, was something that I call it like Don't Break the Ice, if you're familiar with that little game as a kid where you had the big block and all the big blocks or little blocks made the one big one. So on the Fallen Avatar encounter in phase 2, the whole bottom floor is fragmented up into little pieces that can be broken up one at a time. So that's a cool example of something where we're using the environment as a much bigger role in the encounter, and I'm really, really excited about that. Yeah, so on occasion, we get new technology that we can use in raid encounters. Like one that we got, like a good example was in Mists of Pandaria, we got what we call movement forces, where we can kind of like push the player. And then, you've seen that used multiple places, like most recently in Gul'dan, when he opens the rift going into the last phase, you get pulled across the platform. So with Tomb of Sargeras, we got some pretty cool new tech. We call it Fog of War internally. So during the Kil'jaeden encounter, which you can actually see today, it's going up on the PTR later today for the first time, so you'll be able to check it out. But during one of the intermission phases, he brings down a darkness on the whole raid, and you have very limited vision. You have to kind of like find your way through that phase with limited vision, with the help of your other allies like Velen and Illidan.
Okay.
So that was a thing that we didn't have the ability to do before, where we can now in this raid. So we'll see how that plays out. Man, it's really hard to pick one in particular. I can speak a little bit more to like some of the philosophies and the ideas that go into that, I guess. Like
very
something that we've been trying to do more and more, is tune and make the encounters for the target audience. So where in the past we might have done something like keep all the mechanics in an encounter, let's say like on an LFR or normal difficulty, right? You always say like, oh yeah, on LFR everything just tickles, right? That's how we tune it, is it just tickles. But we've been trying more and more to push it into, let's just delete things that, aren't going to matter. Just get rid of them, and then pick, one or two things that we really want you to learn and pay attention to. So we've been trying to, like remove mechanics wholesale if we feel like we're going to have to tune them to a point where players aren't going to care about it. So, a good example of that, I think, was, again, talking about Gul'dan, in normal difficulty, in phase 2, he just didn't summon the Dreadlords, right? They just weren't there. So we just removed that mechanic, and then that was something that we would introduce going into Heroic. which I think is also neat because, you know, when you're a normal raider and you graduate into heroic, or a heroic raider graduating into mythic, there should be that thing where it's like, okay, cool, what's different now? What do I have to learn now? What do I have to pay attention to this time? So we always try to keep, you know, that fresh as you go up in difficulty or down. Yeah, so, you know, we were talking about the order that you go through the instance. So
Yes.
there will be a shortcut. Once you have defeated the maiden, I believe it's 4 times, you'll be able to skip straight down the you know, the trap door that once you socket in all the pillars, you can open up that trap door. The shortcut will be to open that before having to kill anything else in the other wings. So you'll be able to go off straight to maiden.
To maiden, but only to the maiden and so 3 bosses until Killjade.
Yeah, I believe the wing to the wing will also open with that shortcut. So what we were talking about earlier, you know, once you defeat Goroth, you will be able to go, you know, basically throughout the whole zone at that point. We don't tune on specific legendaries, if that's what your question is. You know, we know that legendaries are going to give you, you know, a certain small percentage of power increase, and we do tune around, especially like for the mythic raids, we tune around everyone having 2 legendaries. But we don't, like, you know, think of mechanics with like, okay, if everyone is wearing this specific legendary, they'll be able to do this mechanic. That's not something that we try to do. We just know, okay, cool, we can expect X% DPS increase because everyone's got these, and then we kind of go from there. Yeah, it's kind of similar there. We don't expect a certain artifact, like a specific artifact level for that. For Mythic, we know you're going to have Concordance, so we do tune around having it. But again, it's you know, just a certain DPS increase that we know and can expect, and we can plug that into our spreadsheets and, you know, have fun with the number crunching.
Okay.
Right. So with requiring specific classes, we don't usually do that for anything outside of, like you mentioned it, and even in Blackrock Foundry, I think on Mythic, you know, it was tuned around having the mind control. We wouldn't do that on, you know, normal or heroic because, you know, you could only have 10 people. So we don't try to tune around that there. We also try to put multiple different ways to go about it where possible, right? So like Mythical Dan, there was the mechanic at the end where you had to tank the ad, and you could either spell steal it or you could mind control the guy and have him cast it on your teammates, stuff like that. So anytime where we can come up with more than one, you know, class mechanic to come up with a solution to the same problem, we usually try to do that where possible.
Okay.
I can't speak to specifics. You'll have to wait and see, but I could talk a little bit about, like, you know, the philosophy of if we do that or not. It's not something where we go into a raid tier and we say, okay, cool, it's Mythic Killjade and we have to do an extra phase. Okay, go figure it out. It's more one of those things where, you know, if it presents itself in a way that is cool and makes sense, we'll do it. I don't personally, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but I don't personally feel like it's a requirement to make it a really cool Mythic encounter. You know, we've done lots of...
If we see Blackhand, for example.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? So we've done... it's funny, we were... With the Blackhand example that you're talking about, it was like, hey, what would you even do as a... Like, could we add a 4th floor? How...
Yeah. What's my first idea?
Do we drop into that bucket at the bottom, you know? Like, I don't know. Like, what is that, right? So that's a good example of one where it wouldn't really make sense to add that Mythic only phase. So when it makes sense, we try to do it. We don't say like, all right, this is a requirement, let's do it. Gul'dan, you know, we had Illidan sitting up in that crystal right above us, and we all looked at that and said, this looks like a good opportunity, you know?
Okay, so no information about if or if not there is for Killjade. Okay. Yeah, I tried it, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of Mythic raiding in particular, many people stated that it was very unrewarding in the Nighthold because of the War and Titanforge system. They could get very much the same loot, if they are lucky, in Heroic. Are there any plans to change this system?
I don't think there's any immediate plans, that's something that, our itemization team handles a lot of that. I think for Tomb, like something that I always personally look at and think about is, I think if you look at the Mythic Tomb Raiders and you look at, a heroic raiding group, the Mythic group is just, they're going to have a higher eye level than the heroic group. Yes, the heroic group does have that opportunity to potentially see that, like, 930, 940 Titan Forge thing, but that's the exception. That's a rare, moment of excitement for that group, where the Mythic group is just across the board going to have eye levels that look closer to that. So no immediate plans to change it. I talked about it, I guess, a little bit briefly earlier, where we're trying to use the environment a lot in Tomb of Sargeras. I know this isn't exactly what you're asking, but I think it's funny. One of the things that we did learn with that we applied to Tomb of Sargeras is we tuned, like we looked at the numbers and adjusted the numbers, all the Nighthold bosses, I think no less than 3 times. We did it once for release, we did it again for like the PTR development, and then one last time right before 715 and the actual release of Nighthold. So we spent a lot of time just like, adjusting the numbers, and a new round of class changes have gone out. Let's tune it up again. Yeah. With Tomb of Sargeras, we kind of were patient and waited until the end and just did that once. We saved a lot of time this time around with that.
Oh, okay.
It was nice. That's more of a like development question than I know
no problem.
What you're looking for. But
that
was something that we learned, and we're like, okay, let's not do that one again.
Okay.
Let's just do it the one time. Yeah. So, difficulty of Tomb of Sargeras, yeah, I imagine it will look a lot closer to Nighthold than to Emerald Nightmare. For the most part, I would say, with the exception of our first raid of the expansion, the tuning is usually, we try to hit the same mark for the tuning. So for Nighthold and Tomb of Sargeras, it'll look pretty similar, or we'll have the same targets. For the first raid of the expansion, we usually have different targets. It could be people's first time stepping foot into a raid. It's the beginning of the expansion, especially with this one. There were some significant class changes that happened, so we wanted to give people the opportunity to kind of like test that out in a raid environment. So the tuning targets were a little bit different for Emerald Nightmare versus the Nighthold. But with Nighthold and Tomb, they'll be, I think, roughly
pretty much
equivalent.
The same. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've experimented with stuff like that in the past, with the Sunwell having the bosses released later. Like Ice Crown is another one that I hear brought up sometimes, where we had the wings unlocked week after week, and then at the end after all the wings were unlocked, we opened the zone, or I'm sorry, we opened Heroic at that point. We don't currently have I think any plans to change the way that we've been rolling it out recently. I think we're pretty happy with how that's worked. I think a lot of guilds take it at their own pace, like, so where one group might get to Mythic Gul'dan or Mythic Kil'jaeden the first week, at the other end of the spectrum, you've got the guys who, are getting there 4 or 5 or 6 weeks later, and they kind of have that pacing figured out for themselves. So we like to give people that opportunity.
Okay.
That's not something I can speak about. I would say, just keep the lookout for information coming up, hopefully in the near future. No, totally. I think I think you even mentioned it yourself. Heroic Kil'jaeden will be up on the PTR today, actually, for the first time. So you can see that answer for yourself very soon. Yeah, and I don't think much has changed on that front. We don't have plans to add a spectator mode for raids. It's not, yeah, like you mentioned, like for PvP, it's really interesting. We have that, we have esports with that. There's a lot of stuff there. But one of the concerns, I think, with spectator mode and raids would be that would then become like a requirement. That would become the way to play. You would have recruiting a coach position, and you would have people who that is their role on the team, and that becomes what people consider the best way to play, and that's not the way we really consider rating right now.
I guess that, but
Yeah, so he's boss 1 of the raid. You know, usually with boss 1s of really every raid tier, we try to keep the mechanics a little bit more simple. We try to make sure that they're really intuitive and you can kind of figure it out. So with Goroth, you know, he crashes in through the beautiful stained glass window in the back of the room, smashes into the ground. He's actually what creates, you know, the path down to the Naga wing, and he crawls up out of that hole, which is super cool.
Yeah.
He has a couple mechanics where he creates pillars. You know, player created collision basically, and then he has mechanics that play with that. So there's one where you have to hide behind them to get out of line of sight of him or you die, and then he also has another mechanic that we so fondly call bowling internally. You know, where he throws a giant meteor or a rock at someone, and he has to stand behind pillars to not take, you know, lethal damage from that. And the number of pillars you have to make him bowl through kind of goes up as you go up in difficulty. So that, you know, every time the ball hits a pillar, it reduces the damage of it.
Ah, okay.
So that's
so
the gist of
it has
Goroth.
to hit multiple pillars to reduce the damage. Okay.
Oh man, I can't remember off the top of my head now, but I really hope his achievement is something bowling related. I think it is. Right. One. So that's one that we're pretty excited about. It's we don't do it too often, but it's a fight where you have to split your raid up into 2 different groups. Kind of reminiscent of like Gothic the Harvester back in Naxxramas, right? Where you have to go, one of them goes into the spirit realm, the other one stays in the regular realm, and as you defeat the creatures, they change what they are and they switch between the 2 realms. There's also mechanics there that, you know, you have to get hit by a mechanic in the spirit realm in the other realm to remove a debuff or something like that on the creatures.
Have you to switch the groups from the spirit realm to the normal realm again, or can they stay all the time on one specific realm?
Yep, you can switch. You can switch different realms at different times. So this is another one where, you know, we're talking about the use of the environment. We were talking about this, and Thaddeus, you know, we obviously looked at Thaddeus and talked about him and the different mechanics there and how we can use them in this instance. So instead of, you know, just like on Thaddeus, you, I think, exploded when you touched the positive and negative charges. This one, you get a debuff, and after a certain amount of time, you'll explode. And in the vein of using the environment, if you jump into, there's a hole in the middle of the room. If you jump into the hole in the middle of the room, when you blow up down there, you're protecting yourself as well as the raid, and also it knocks you up and out of the hole. So you can try to like jump in later so that, you know, you can maximize your DPS time if you jump in later and it knocks you up. You also have to be careful not to jump too early, or the knock up won't knock you out of the hole all the way. And then you just fall to your death tragically. So
yes, very interesting encounter. Yeah, so thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope you have a nice testing day, I guess, in 1 hour. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate your time, Patrick.
Thank you.